The cafe was buzzing with the usual evening crowd. The smell of fresh coffee and baked pastries filled the air, mixing with the low hum of conversation. The young waitress moved quickly between the tables, carrying plates, refilling cups, and smiling politely at the regulars who greeted her by name. She had worked here for a few years now, and everyone thought they knew her. They saw her as quiet, polite, and always busy. They didn't know anything about her life outside the cafe. They certainly didn't know the secret she carried. Every morning, she would wake up before dawn, preparing for her long shift. She lived in a small, modest apartment with just enough space for her essentials. The walls were plain, and the furniture was old, but it was her space. She spent her free time in silence, away from the noise of the world. Music was her comfort, her escape, though she never let anyone see it. No one in the cafe knew that beneath her calm exterior, she had a gift that could stop people in their tracks. At the back corner of the cafe sat an old piano. It was dusty and had keys that were slightly yellowed with age. Most customers never paid it much attention. It seemed like an afterthought, just part of the furniture. But to the waitress, it was a friend. She often glanced at it while serving tables, remembering the hours she had spent playing on a similar piano when she was younger. Music had been a part of her life long before she became a waitress, long before she had to focus on survival and paychecks. Her days were not easy. The cafe was always busy, and she often worked double shifts to make ends meet. Customers could be rude, orders were sometimes wrong, and the kitchen staff could be chaotic. But she moved through it all with a quiet determination. Her thoughts often drifted back to the piano. She longed for the moment when she could sit down and play, even if it was only in her mind for now. The cafe's owner, a kind but busy man, had noticed her dedication. He trusted her to handle the busiest tables, the trickiest orders, and even the occasional difficult customer. But he, like everyone else, saw her only as the dependable waitress. He didn't know about the years of piano lessons, the late nights practicing, and the music competitions she had once dreamed of winning. Those dreams had been put aside for practicality, for work, for life. As the evening progressed, the cafe filled with more people. Friends gathered at tables, couples talked quietly, and a few solo customers sipped their drinks while reading. The waitress moved gracefully between them, always alert, always ready to help. She remembered each regular's favorite order, their usual seat, and even small details they mentioned in passing. Her attention to detail made her excellent at her job, but it also helped her feel connected in a world where she often felt invisible. During a short break, she leaned against the counter and glanced at the piano again. Her fingers itched to touch the keys, but she reminded herself that this was work, not a recital hall. She had learned long ago that showing her talent in this setting could be risky. People might laugh, they might not care, or worse, they might misunderstand her. Still, the piano called to her in a way nothing else could. Memories flooded her mind, memories of her childhood. Sitting in front of a piano that had been much like this one, learning her first notes, she remembered the excitement of hitting the right key for the first time. The pride in her parents' eyes when she performed for them. She remembered the music competitions, the applause, and the sense of accomplishment. But those moments were distant now, tucked away behind years of work and responsibility. Life had a way of making people put their dreams on hold. She moved back to the tables, refilling a cup of coffee and taking a tray to a table in the corner. A group of young people laughed loudly, sharing stories of their day. The waitress smiled politely, listened briefly, and moved on. She had learned to blend into the background, to be efficient and unnoticed. It was easier that way. Life had taught her that standing out could sometimes bring complications she wasn't ready to face. Yet, despite her calm exterior, she carried a fire within her. Music had shaped her, taught her patience, discipline, and the beauty of expression. Even in the chaos of the cafe, she felt its presence. Every clatter of dishes, every murmur of conversation, every sip of coffee reminded her of rhythm, of timing, of harmony. She imagined melodies in the noise around her, turning everyday sounds into a silent symphony in her mind. Her coworkers often chatted amongst themselves, joking and sharing stories, but she rarely joined in. They didn't mind. They had accepted her quiet nature. She had friends at work, yes, but her real companion was music. It was her solace at the end of a long day, her companion when the world felt heavy. And the piano in the corner, forgotten by most, held a special promise that one day her music might not have to stay hidden. As the night went on, the cafe started to thin out. The regulars had left, and only a few lingering customers remained. She wiped down tables, restocked supplies, and prepared for the closing tasks. The exhaustion from a full day's work pressed against her, but she kept going. Work was a routine, a structure, a necessity. But the thought of the piano lingered, growing stronger with each passing hour. She caught herself glancing at it again, imagining the feel of the keys under her fingers, the sound resonating through the room. She thought of music not as an escape anymore, but as a part of who she was. The idea that she could share it even in a small way was tempting. Yet she hesitated. The cafe was not a stage, and the customers were not an audience ready to appreciate a hidden talent. The risk of failure or embarrassment was real. Her mind wandered back to her childhood again. She remembered the joy of learning a new piece, the way music could make her feel alive, understood, and free. Those memories were bittersweet now, tinged with longing and a sense of loss for the years when she had to focus on survival instead of passion. But they were also reminders of what she was capable of the talent she had cultivated quietly and diligently. A few moments of silence in the cafe allowed her to hear the soft clinking of cups and the distant hum of conversation. She imagined these sounds blending into a melody, a composition of ordinary life. She closed her eyes briefly, letting herself drift into the rhythm, imagining the piano beneath her fingers. The feeling was almost intoxicating, a mix of anticipation, longing, and comfort. When she opened her eyes, a small group of customers had entered and were waiting to be seated. She moved to greet them, smiling politely, taking their orders and guiding them to a table. The routine continued, the flow of work uninterrupted. Yet, inside her, the music never stopped. Every step she took, every tray she carried, every order she fulfilled was accompanied by a silent soundtrack only she could hear. As the evening drew to a close, the cafe began to empty further. The lights dimmed slightly, and the atmosphere became more relaxed. She wiped down the last few tables and stacked chairs neatly. Finally, with a deep breath, she walked past the piano again. The keys gleamed faintly under the soft lighting, and for a moment the cafe seemed still, as if holding its breath. She reached out, lightly brushing her fingers over the keys, feeling the texture, the history, and the potential within them. She didn't play yet. Not tonight. But the touch was enough to remind her of her connection to music, of the talent she had kept hidden for so long. She knew that one day the piano would not be just a silent companion. One day the music would flow and people would hear the depth of her skill. Until then, she would continue to move through her days quietly, tending to her work, observing the world around her, and carrying the secret melody in her heart. The night ended, and the cafe was finally empty. She turned off the lights, locked the doors, and stepped outside into the cool night air. The city was alive with sounds, distant traffic, footsteps, and the murmur of late-night conversations. She walked home slowly, feeling the fatigue in her body, but also a quiet satisfaction. Another day had passed, another day closer to the moment when her music could no longer stay hidden. And though no one knew it yet, the world was about to hear what she had been keeping to herself for so long. The next evening, the cafe was busier than usual. The chatter was louder, plates clinking, and baristas calling out orders with energy. The waitress moved through the crowd, carrying trays, taking orders, and offering smiles that were polite but tired. She had worked long hours and her body felt the strain, but her mind remained alert, always anticipating the needs of the customers. A group of young people had gathered near the corner where the piano stood. They were laughing, joking loudly, and taking turns tapping the keys. The sound was clumsy, harsh, and far from music. One of them nudged the piano bench, jokingly inviting anyone to play. The waitress watched silently from across the room, her eyes briefly meeting the piano, as if drawn to it by some invisible force. One of the young men, bold and boisterous, laughed and said that it was no place for serious playing. The others joined in, teasing anyone who might take it seriously. The waitress felt a small, familiar ache inside her chest. The piano was not just furniture to her. It was a companion, a friend, and a source of comfort she had held close for years. Watching it treated like a toy was both painful and oddly tempting. She moved past the tables, serving drinks, refilling coffee, and answering questions. But her attention kept drifting back to the piano. She imagined herself sitting down, letting her fingers glide over the keys, and letting the music flow. The idea was thrilling, but she reminded herself that this was a public space, not a concert hall. What if people laughed? What if they didn't care? And yet, a tiny voice inside her whispered that tonight might be different. The group of young people continued their playful chaos, now challenging anyone nearby to play something better. They looked around, daring someone to take the seat. The cafe was still filled with other customers, many watching with mild amusement or curiosity. The waitress paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. Her heart pounded, a mixture of fear and excitement. Slowly, almost cautiously, she walked toward the piano. The room seemed to notice her movement, though no one spoke. Her hands hovered above the keys, feeling their familiar texture, recalling the rhythm of countless pieces she had practiced over the years. She felt the energy of the room, the laughter, the expectation, the doubt, all pressing against her. Yet beneath it there was a calmness, certainty that this was where she was meant to be at that moment. A hush began to spread as the young people realized she was stepping forward. They laughed nervously at first, unsure whether to expect a serious performance or more playful tinkering. The waitress closed her eyes for a moment, letting herself feel the piano beneath her fingers. Remembering every lesson, every late-night practice, and every quiet moment when music had been her solace. Her fingers touched the keys lightly at first. Testing the sound, feeling the vibration travel through her hands, the first note rang clear, simple, and pure. The room, once filled with noise, began to quiet. Conversations faded, cups paused mid-air, and the young people stopped their teasing. There was a shift, subtle at first, but unmistakable. Something unexpected was about to happen. She played the opening notes of a piece she had memorized long ago. It was not flashy, not meant to show off, but every note was deliberate, carrying emotion, depth, and honesty. The cafe, which had been filled with laughter and casual chatter, became a space of focused attention. The customers turned toward her, drawn by the beauty of the sound. Eyes widened, jaws dropped, and a few customers whispered to each other, unsure whether they were witnessing a dream. The young group in the corner exchanged glances, their confidence fading. The laughter had vanished, replaced by awe and disbelief. They had challenged the piano, expecting fun and noise, but now they faced something they had not anticipated. The waitress continued, her fingers dancing effortlessly, expressing emotion in a way words could never capture. Her music told a story that the crowd began to feel in their hearts, each note built on the last, creating layers of sound that filled the room. The rhythm was steady, powerful, and moving. Some customers closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Others leaned forward, mesmerized, unable to tear their eyes away. The waitress remained focused, lost in the music, unaware of her growing audience. Her world had narrowed to the piano, the keys, and the sound that flowed through her. The piece reached a gentle, emotional section. She slowed her tempo, letting the notes linger, creating a sense of suspense, reflection, and longing. The room felt still, as though holding its breath. Even the staff behind the counter paused, captivated by the unexpected transformation. The cafe had become a stage, and she, the unassuming waitress, was commanding it with nothing but her talent and passion. Memories of her past performances flooded her mind. She was not thinking of herself. She was thinking of the music, the emotion it could carry, and the connection it could create. Every glance, every tear, every smile from the audience fueled her performance. She had dreamed of this moment for years, but she had never imagined it would happen in a small cafe rather than a grand concert hall. As the piece progressed, she added subtle flourishes, variations in tempo, and delicate touches that made the music even more captivating. Her fingers moved with precision, grace, and confidence, each note resonating in the hearts of those listening. The young people in the corner were silent now, astonished at the skill and emotion pouring from the piano. The cafe, once a place of casual routine, had been transformed into a space of wonder and magic. A few customers reached for their phones, capturing the moment, realizing they were witnessing something rare. Others sat back, too absorbed to record, wanting to remember the feeling rather than the image. The waitress, unaware of the small crowd gathering, continued her performance, letting the music tell her story, her struggles, her dreams, and her heart. The piece moved toward a climax, powerful and expressive, yet controlled. Every chord struck with purpose, every melody flowing naturally. She played not for applause, not for recognition, but because it was the only way she could communicate the depths of her emotions. The audience felt it. They sensed the honesty, the passion, and the years of dedication that had led to this moment. A silence followed the final note. It was a quiet, heavy pause, as if the cafe itself was breathing, taking in the weight of what had just been shared. Then, slowly, whispers began, spreading from table to table. Eyes filled with admiration, smiles appeared. The young people who had been teasing earlier looked stunned, their expressions a mixture of respect and disbelief. The cafe had been silenced, not by force, but by the beauty of unexpected talent. She looked up from the piano, finally noticing the faces around her. There were no rude comments, no mocking laughter, only astonishment and appreciation. The customers were clapping, some standing, some cheering softly. Her heart raced, not from fear but from the overwhelming sense that she had shared something deeply personal, and that it had been received with understanding and respect. The cafe owner, standing at the back, watched in awe. He had known she was quiet and dedicated, but he had never imagined the depth of her talent. He realized that the waitress he had seen as reliable and humble was capable of something extraordinary. This moment, simple yet profound, changed everything. The piano was no longer just a piece of furniture. It was a gateway to revealing a hidden brilliance that had been waiting for the right time. The young people in the corner approached her hesitantly. They spoke in low tones, expressing their admiration and apologizing for their earlier teasing. She smiled gently, nodding, not needing words to accept their acknowledgement. The music had spoken for her, and that was enough. The connection between performer and audience was complete, and the cafe had become a space of shared experience, respect, and wonder. For the rest of the evening, customers came not only for coffee and pastries but also to witness her talent. People whispered about the waitress who could play the piano so beautifully that it silenced the room. Her life, once quiet and unnoticed, had been touched by a moment of recognition that she had long deserved. She returned to her work with a new sense of confidence, a quiet pride, and the knowledge that her music could reach others in ways she had only dreamed of. As the cafe closed and she turned off the lights, she glanced once more at the piano. It had been the same old piano, dusty and unassuming, yet it had carried her talent and allowed her to shine. She knew that this was only the beginning, that her life and her music were changing, that she would never again be content with hiding what she could do. For the first time in a long while, she walked home with a lightness in her step, feeling that the world was now ready to listen to her, and she was finally ready to play. The following evening, the cafe was quieter than usual. With the last rays of the sun casting warm light across the tables, the young waitress entered with a sense of anticipation she had not felt in years. The memory of her performance the night before lingered in her mind like a soft echo. Customers had spoken about it, sharing the story of a quiet waitress whose music silenced the cafe. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen, and that feeling carried her through the day as she moved through the tables. Taking orders and serving drinks, she noticed a few new faces. People who had heard of her performance and had come specifically to see her play. Their eyes sparkled with curiosity and admiration. She greeted them with her usual polite smile, but felt a flicker of nervousness. The piano in the corner seemed to call to her again, urging her to sit, to let the music flow. To tell the story that words could not capture, she wiped down a table near the piano, pretending to busy herself with the routine, but her thoughts kept drifting to the keys. Memories of hours spent practicing alone came back vividly: the dedication, the late nights, the sacrifices she had made to keep her talent alive. She had put her music on hold for years, focusing on work, on life's necessities, but now it felt like a bridge back to a part of herself she had feared lost. The cafe slowly filled, and the atmosphere was different from the previous night. There was a quiet excitement, a sense that something special might happen again. She moved between tables, taking note of the customers' reactions, the way they glanced toward the piano, the anticipation in their expressions. Even the regulars, who had always known her as just another waitress, seemed to sense that there was more beneath the surface. A young couple sat near the piano, holding hands and exchanging smiles as they watched her work. She felt a small surge of warmth, a connection that music often brought to people even before a note was played. It reminded her that music was not only about skill, but about the feelings it could awaken, the bonds it could create, the moments it could make unforgettable. She took a deep breath and approached the piano. Her fingers hovered above the keys, feeling the familiar texture, recalling the rhythm and flow of the pieces she had learned long ago. The cafe seemed to hold its breath again, the buzz of conversation dimming as customers sensed something about to unfold. The young couple looked up, eyes wide with anticipation. Even the regulars paused, curious to see if the story of the quiet waitress with hidden talent was true. Her first notes were gentle, almost tentative, but they carried a clarity and emotion that immediately captured attention. Conversations faded into silence. The piano's voice, once hidden and ignored, now filled the room with a presence that demanded notice. She played not for recognition, not for applause, because the music was part of her, a voice that had been waiting for the right moment to speak. As the melody unfolded, the room transformed. Customers leaned forward, captivated by the depth and feeling in each note. Her fingers moved with confidence, each key struck with purpose and emotion. The music told a story, her story of years of quiet perseverance, hidden dreams, of a love for an art that had never left her. Even those who had never paid attention to the piano before were drawn in, carried by the beauty and honesty of the performance. She played a piece that was familiar to her, yet she poured herself into it, adding subtle variations and flourishes that made the music uniquely hers. Every note resonated with emotion, expressing what words could never convey. The cafe, once a space of routine and casual chatter, had become a sanctuary where people could feel, reflect, and connect. Her music created an invisible thread linking everyone in the room, shared experience of awe and wonder. A few customers whispered to each other, astonished by the skill and passion on display. The young couple sat close together, holding hands. As if the music had given them a moment of intimacy they could feel but not describe, the regulars watched with admiration, realizing that the quiet waitress they had known for years possessed a brilliance that had been hidden in plain sight. Even the cafe staff paused, captivated by the transformation. By the power of music to change the ordinary into something extraordinary, the piece grew in intensity, each chord building on the last, creating layers of sound that filled every corner of the cafe. Her fingers danced across the keys with grace and precision, expressing emotions that had been bottled up for years. The music was not just technical skill. It was a language of the heart, a way to share her experiences, struggles, and triumphs without uttering a single word. Every person in the room felt it in their own way. Some with tears in their eyes, others with quiet smiles, all with a sense of reverence as she continued. Memories of her past performances and late-night practices mingled with the present moment. She remembered the joy of learning a new piece, the pride in her accomplishments, and the comfort music had provided during lonely times. These memories infused her playing with authenticity and depth. Each note was a reflection of her journey, her persistence, and her unwavering love for music. The cafe had become a stage, and she was the unassuming performer, commanding attention with nothing but her talent and heart. She did not need a grand hall, bright lights, or a large audience. The connection she created with the people in that small cafe through the simple act of playing the piano was more powerful than any applause she had ever imagined. The music was alive, breathing, and moving everyone in the room. The piece reached its climax. Powerful yet controlled, every note striking with precision and emotion. She felt a surge of exhilaration, a mixture of release and fulfillment. Her music had become a bridge, connecting her to the audience, to her own past, and to a future she had not dared to imagine. The cafe, once a place of ordinary routines, had been transformed into a space of beauty, reflection, and shared humanity as the final notes lingered and faded. There was a moment of silence, heavy and profound, as if the room itself were absorbing the impact of what had been shared. Then, slowly, applause began, soft at first, then growing louder, more confident. The customers, young and old, regulars and newcomers alike, stood in admiration. Moved by the unexpected talent and the emotion it had conveyed, the young couple clapped, the regulars cheered, and even the cafe staff expressed their astonishment and respect. The waitress looked up from the piano, her heart pounding, a mixture of relief and joy flooding her senses. She had shared a part of herself that had long been hidden, and it had been received with appreciation and understanding. The room was no longer just a cafe. It was a space where connection, emotion, and beauty had been shared through music. She felt seen in a way she had never experienced before, and it was both humbling and exhilarating. The young people who had once teased the piano approached her quietly, their expressions a mix of awe and respect. They admitted their surprise and apologized for their earlier behavior. She smiled gently, nodding, accepting their acknowledgement without words. The music had spoken for her, bridging gaps and transforming skepticism into admiration. For the remainder of the evening, customers lingered not only for the coffee and pastries, but also for the chance to experience her music. They whispered among themselves, sharing stories of the quiet waitress whose talent had silenced the cafe, transforming it into a space of wonder and emotional resonance. She moved through her work with a newfound confidence, aware that her life was changing, that her music had power, and that the world was ready to listen. When the cafe finally closed, she turned off the lights and walked past the piano one last time. Her fingers brushed the keys lightly, feeling the texture, the weight, and the potential within them. She knew this was just the beginning. The piano had revealed a part of her that had long been hidden. She was ready to let the music continue, to share her story, and to embrace the recognition and opportunities that might come. For the first time in a long while, she walked home with a sense of purpose. Knowing that her talent could no longer remain in the shadows, the night was calm, and the cafe had a gentle hum of conversations. The young waitress arrived, feeling a quiet excitement she had not felt in years. The memory of the previous performances lingered in her mind like a soft echo, reminding her that she had found a voice she could no longer hide. The customers, regulars, and newcomers alike greeted her warmly, many with curiosity in their eyes. Eager to see her at the piano again, as she moved through the tables, taking orders and delivering drinks, she noticed the subtle glances of anticipation directed toward the piano in the corner. It seemed as if the room itself was waiting for her to awaken the music once more. She felt a flutter of nervousness, yet it was accompanied by a sense of readiness, a deep knowing that this was where she was meant to be. The piano called to her, not as a piece of furniture, but as a portal to expression, connection, and revelation. A small child sat near the piano, quietly observing her with wide eyes. The child's fascination reminded her of her own early years, when music had been a source of wonder, comfort, and joy. She smiled at the child, who returned it with shy curiosity. It was moments like these that reminded her of the power of music to reach across generations. To speak directly to the heart without words or explanation, she approached the piano, her fingers lightly brushing the keys as she prepared to play. The cafe fell into a gentle silence, the usual chatter replaced by attentive listening. Each note she played carried emotion, reflecting her life experiences, her struggles, her dreams, and the quiet determination that had guided her through years of work and responsibility. The music told a story, her story, in a language everyone in the room could understand. The opening melody was soft and tender, drawing the listeners in gradually. She played with a sensitivity that conveyed vulnerability and strength at the same time. Customers leaned forward, some with eyes closed, others watching intently, captivated by the subtle power of the notes. Each chord was deliberate, expressing feelings she could not fully put into words, and yet everyone in the room felt them deeply. Memories of her life surfaced as she played the early mornings of practice, the lonely evenings when music had been her only companion, and the moments of quiet triumph when a piece was finally mastered. These memories infused her playing with authenticity and depth. The music became a living reflection of her journey. Resonating with every person present in the cafe, the melody shifted, becoming more intense and passionate. Her fingers moved swiftly across the keys, yet with grace and control, creating a powerful emotional impact. The room seemed to vibrate with the music, each note connecting the audience to her personal story. Some customers were moved to tears, others to quiet contemplation. The music was not just sound. It was a bridge between hearts, a shared experience of human emotion that transcended words. A young couple held hands tightly, leaning into each other as the music enveloped them. The regulars, who had known the waitress only as a polite and quiet presence, now saw her in a completely new light. Her talent, long hidden, had become a revelation. A gift that transformed the ordinary cafe into a sanctuary of feeling and connection. Even the staff, busy in the background, paused to listen, recognizing the profound beauty in her performance. As the piece evolved, she introduced gentle variations, subtle changes in tempo, and nuanced dynamics that added depth and complexity. Each note was infused with emotion, telling stories of hope, longing, resilience, and quiet triumph. The audience felt the narrative unfold, sensing the layers of experience behind the music. It was as if she were inviting them into her life, allowing them to witness the moments that had shaped her. All through the language of the piano, her mind wandered briefly to her past, challenges the years of hard work, the times she had doubted herself, the moments of exhaustion and uncertainty. All of these experiences were now woven into her music, giving it an authenticity that resonated with everyone listening. The piano became more than an instrument. It was a vessel for expression, a way to communicate emotions that had long been held within. The room was completely captivated. Conversations had stopped, cups were set aside, and eyes were fixed on her hands moving across the keys. The young child watched in awe, wide-eyed and silent, absorbing the beauty of the music. Parents glanced at each other, silently acknowledging the extraordinary moment they were witnessing. Even the cafe's owner, standing at the back, felt a sense of pride and amazement. The quiet waitress they had known for years had transformed the space with her talent. She played a series of notes that were both delicate and powerful, each one carrying a piece of her story. The music spoke of struggle and perseverance, of dreams pursued quietly and with dedication, of the quiet strength that had kept her going through difficult times. It was a reminder to everyone in the room that talent and passion often reside in unexpected places, waiting for the right moment to emerge. As the performance continued, she felt a sense of liberation, a release of emotions that had been held tightly for years. Her playing became more expressive, more confident, and more alive. The audience responded intuitively, sensing the depth of her experience and the sincerity of her expression. Some wiped away tears, others smiled softly, and all were connected by the shared beauty of the music. The piece reached a gentle climax, a moment of profound emotion that seemed to suspend time. The notes lingered in the air, resonating deeply within everyone present. She allowed the final chords to fade slowly, creating a space for reflection and appreciation. The cafe, once a place of routine and casual activity, had been transformed into a sanctuary of emotion, connection, and human experience. The first round of applause was soft, almost hesitant, but it grew steadily as the audience acknowledged the extraordinary performance. Customers rose to their feet, clapping and cheering, some with tears in their eyes. The young couple smiled at each other, the regulars exchanged looks of amazement, and even the staff expressed admiration and respect. The music had spoken for itself, revealing the depth of her talent and the richness of her inner life. She looked up from the piano, her heart full of gratitude and joy. The room was no longer just a cafe. It was a space of shared emotion, understanding, and wonder. The audience had experienced something rare and beautiful, a glimpse into her world through the language of music. The quiet waitress, once unnoticed and underestimated, had become a beacon of talent and expression, leaving a lasting impact on everyone present. The young child near the piano approached her cautiously, eyes wide with admiration. She knelt down briefly, smiling warmly, and the child's eyes lit up with excitement. It was a small, simple moment, but it reminded her of the power of music to inspire, to connect, and to touch lives in meaningful ways. She realized that her gift was not just for herself. It was for everyone who needed to feel the emotions and stories that music could convey. For the rest of the evening, the cafe was filled with a sense of magic and wonder. Customers lingered, savoring the memory of the performance, sharing whispers of admiration and expressing their appreciation. The young waitress moved through her duties with a quiet confidence, aware that her life had shifted in profound ways. She had shared a part of herself that had long been hidden, and the world had responded with warmth, respect, and recognition. As the cafe closed and the lights dimmed, she approached the piano one last time. Her fingers lightly brushed the keys, feeling the texture, the history, and the potential within them. She knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would continue to unfold, that her music had the power to touch hearts, transform spaces, and connect people in ways she had never imagined. Walking home that night, she carried with her a sense of fulfillment, hope, and excitement for the future. Knowing that her talent was finally being seen and heard, the cafe was quieter than usual that evening. Yet, there was a sense of anticipation lingering in the air. Word had spread about the young waitress with the extraordinary talent for playing the piano. People arrived early, curious and eager to witness her music. She walked through the doors with a calm confidence, carrying herself with a quiet dignity that reflected the growth she had experienced over the past few performances. The piano in the corner seemed to shine under the soft cafe lights, almost waiting for her to sit and play. She approached it slowly, her fingers brushing over the keys as memories of the previous nights flooded her mind. Each performance had taught her something new, not just about her music, but about herself and the power of connecting with others through art. The cafe had become a stage, and the audience was no longer strangers, but witnesses to her story. Sharing in the emotions her music conveyed, she began to play, starting with a gentle, soft melody that filled the room with warmth and intimacy. Customers paused in their conversations, their attention drawn to the music. The young couple who had attended the previous evening sat near the piano, their faces glowing with anticipation. Regulars smiled, their eyes reflecting admiration and a quiet respect. Even the staff behind the counter slowed their work, captivated by the unfolding performance. The music flowed effortlessly, each note carrying emotion and meaning. She played not just with skill, but with a deep sense of purpose, telling her story through the piano. The melodies spoke of her journey, the years of quiet perseverance, the moments of doubt, the challenges she had faced, and the hope that had kept her moving forward. Each chord resonated with authenticity, touching the hearts of those listening in ways words never could. As the piece evolved, she added subtle variations and delicate nuances that made the music uniquely hers. The audience responded intuitively, some closing their eyes to immerse themselves fully, others leaning forward, unable to look away. The cafe had transformed into a space of shared emotion, where the ordinary had been replaced by something extraordinary. The young waitress, once unseen and underestimated, had become the heart of the room, commanding attention with nothing but her talent and passion. Memories of her life, intertwined with the music, the quiet hours of practice, the early mornings, the sacrifices she had made to keep her dreams alive. These moments infused her playing with depth and meaning, creating a performance that was both powerful and intimate. Each note was a reflection of her experiences, a testament to resilience, dedication, and the beauty of pursuing a passion against all odds. the music grew in intensity, reaching a powerful climax that filled the cafe with energy and emotion. The audience was completely captivated, their focus entirely on her and the story she was telling through her piano. Some were moved to tears, others smiled softly, and all were connected by the shared experience of witnessing something rare and beautiful. The young couple held hands tightly, sharing a quiet, emotional moment. While regular customers exchanged glances of awe and admiration, she allowed the music to ebb and flow, creating moments of tension and release, of reflection and exhilaration. The piece was a journey, a narrative of her life and her emotions, unfolding in real time before the audience. The cafe, once a place of routine and casual activity, had become a sanctuary of expression, where people could feel deeply, connect with each other, and experience the transformative power of art. As the final notes lingered in the air, the room held its breath, absorbing the impact of the performance. Then, slowly, applause began, soft at first, then growing louder, more confident. Customers rose to their feet, clapping and cheering, some with tears in their eyes. The young waitress smiled, a mixture of relief, joy, and pride washing over her. She had shared a part of herself that had long been hidden, and it had been received with warmth, respect, and appreciation. The cafe owner approached her quietly, his eyes filled with admiration. He expressed his amazement at her talent and the way she had transformed the atmosphere of the cafe. For years, he had seen her as a quiet, diligent worker. But now he recognized the extraordinary skill and passion that had been hidden beneath her calm exterior. The waitress nodded humbly, grateful for the acknowledgement, but more focused on the joy of sharing her music. The young couple and several other customers approached her, expressing their admiration and appreciation. They spoke of how deeply they had been moved, how her music had touched their hearts, and how they felt connected to something larger through her performance. The waitress smiled, feeling a sense of fulfillment that went beyond recognition or applause. She had communicated her story, her emotions, and her passion, and the audience had received it openly and sincerely. The night continued with a sense of magic and wonder. Customers lingered, savoring the memory of the performance and discussing the profound impact of the music. The young waitress moved through her duties with a quiet confidence, aware that her life was changing in meaningful ways. She had discovered that her talent was not just for herself, but for everyone who needed to experience the emotions and stories conveyed through her music. As the cafe closed, she walked past the piano one last time, her fingers brushing the keys lightly. The instrument had been a companion, a confidant, and a bridge to her true self. She knew that her journey was far from over, that her music had the power to touch lives, inspire others, and open doors she had never imagined. The world had finally begun to see her for who she was, and she was ready to embrace the opportunities and challenges that lay ahead. Walking home, she felt a sense of lightness and purpose she had never experienced before. Her music had transformed not only the cafe and the audience, but also herself. She realized that her talent had always been a part of her, waiting for the right moment to be shared. That moment had arrived, and it had changed her life forever. She carried with her a sense of hope, excitement, and confidence, knowing that her music would continue to inspire, connect, and create meaningful experiences for everyone who heard it.